in the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you. In the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you.
Over the edge, feel like I'm floating through the air. The pain I felt is paid for, all is said and done. Oh, I am restricted, fixed upon the web. I need to kick the habit that my mind is breathing in. Break out, I've got to see. Spent all my life holding all of it closely. I played it innocent, exaggerated, that's what you assume. The story's over now, I must conclude. I am conflicted, watching where I step still, hanging in the balance, not the life I want to live.
Hey guys, it's Jason from Nearly FPL. You probably wouldn't expecting me to be here today, because Steve-O was doing a stream earlier on and his laptop basically melted. So hello everybody. And it's about 38 degrees in this room. I've got all the doors and windows shut because there's a dog next door that's barking its head off. And Steve-O's fighting with a fan as well. It's really hot over in the UK at the moment, for those of you who don't know. But yeah, nice to see all you guys in chat, all like chilling out, waiting for us to go live. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I think you can. I'm just going to call out some names. Carl Kirsten, one Rovers. He's got Millsies back in chat. We've got Nuno Santo. We've got Marios Sarlidis. I think that's how you say your name. Theo's in chat. Theo Thans. Welcome, Notorious Nerd. FPL Boone is there as well. We've got quite a few people. Tahir, Tahir's in chat. We've got a few people in Discord already waiting to come on the show this evening, so we're not going to leave you guys waiting too long. Absolutely sweltering, and I've got myself a nice bottle of Buxton mineral water to keep me company throughout the stream. Get the cake and vodka out, says One Rovers Vlogs. Yeah, absolutely. How much cake have you got left, Steve-O?
I ate all the following day.
And how much vodka? How much vodka have you got left?
It's about, I don't know, it's only a little small amount left, but that's gonna be left for me drinking on Saturday. You never know, I may come back home on a late Saturday evening and do a stream drunk. You never know. But,
okay, I'll be interested to watch that. Alex Volo's in chat. The guy behind the awesome thumbnails. Alex, hope you're having a great week, and look forward to talking about future projects with you. We've got, whose team is this? This team is my team. And yeah, why? What do you think about this team?
Can I just interject, Jason? It would be, I hate it. You should be having this player. Should be having that player. Shut up. Really? What, mate? It really.
Look, dude. I haven't got 5 at the back or 5 in midfield, so I don't know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? So
I just listen. You haven't got Mason Greenwood as your fourth flaming substitute.
Well, no, I haven't actually. I got Mason Greenwood as my first substitute, but that's another story. There you go.
How do I see your team anyway? Are you able to post the Rate My Team in the Discord?
You want me to post it in the Rate My Team?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing it. Is it any different though from your last one?
Not really. I've just got Salah, Sigurdsson, Perez, Sterling as my captain, which is obviously not going to be my captain. Wilson and King up front. So yeah, it's Greenwood and Donker Kelly.
Obviously, for people that have been here since 6 o'clock earlier on, obviously I did a stream earlier, and just as I was about to do the live calls and everything, that's when everything crashed, but it doesn't matter. But I did just watch the cheers, Jason. I did just watch the stream back, and basically I saw a few comments regarding triple Bournemouth attack, and including yours, Jason, and basically the reasoning is this: Bournemouth are flat track bullies. They like to basically beat the rubbish teams. And I think that Bournemouth's opening 2 fixtures, I think the 2 teams are there for the taking, so to speak. And I think that Wilson, King, and Fraser especially will have some fun. I did see some comments by FPL Booner that Ryan Fraser hasn't been playing, not Ryan Fraser, Josh King hasn't been playing many minutes. And also, I forgot, Daniel Sturridge. I don't know why he's in the game for. He's not a Bournemouth, is he? I thought he went to some team in France or Spain or something. Am I going mad?
Daniel Sturridge.
He went abroad. I'm sure he did.
Daniel Sturridge is an English who plays a striker mostly for blah 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 blah. He's born in Birmingham. Blah blah blah.
Sure, someone in chat will get it quicker.
West Bromwich Albion.
No, it's not.
No. West Brom, Chelsea, Liverpool. It doesn't say he's left Liverpool.
Oh, Sam Sturridge, notorious nerd, is saying.
He's still.
Who?
Yeah, I've not heard anyone. I'm not. I don't know
It's
anyone.
Surridge. It's not Sturridge. It's Surridge.
Right. Okay. So, Surridge, the blonde-haired guy, completely different. So yeah. Should we think about getting some people in on the call-ins?
Absolutely. Bring them on.
Right. Okay. So let's bring you on the Discord call-ins, guys. Bear with me a minute. I just want to know why it's not showing Discord.
You're the tech guy, Jace. You should know what's going on. I can see a lot of. So I'll read out the people that are in the waiting room. There we got FPL Boona, Rudders, Pogsdenia. He was on the other day, wasn't he? Seb and Notorious Nerd are there at the moment, waiting to come live on air to discuss all things fantasy football.
Sounds good. All right, so let's choose somebody. Let's go with Seb. Let's throw Seb in the mix. So Seb, if you can hear us, we're going to get you live on air. Please don't swear and have the stream muted if you can. That'd be great. So Seb, welcome. 3, 2, and 1. He's gone.
Get on Ruddy Pugsdenia. I've got his team up on
Okay. There we go. Ruddy Pogsdenia, are you there? You're live on air. Your microphone's muted. I hope you are. Can you hear me okay? Oh, hang on. Ruddy, can you hear me? I had my mic muted.
Hello, mate. Yeah, how you doing?
Yeah, good. Thank you, Ruddy. Welcome to the stream. You're on air, live on Elite FPL Radio, and we want to talk about your team.
Very different.
Can I talk about your team quickly?
You may do, yes.
Because I had a team like yours a few weeks ago, and
okay.
So a couple of little pointers that I've sort of just very briefly looked at your team there. So one of the developments recently, Digne and Siggy, you've got there, right?
Right. Bear in mind that this team was set up on Monday evening, and I haven't touched it since.
Correct. So the news since then is that Gueye looks like he's gone, and Zuma's gone back to Chelsea. So I don't know. I'm just wondering whether sort of.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, that's just one thing I thought maybe to talk about. Also, Zinchenko, you mentioned to me the other day he wasn't a necessary starter after maybe a couple of first few weeks. Maybe Mendy comes back in.
Yeah.
Perez, unproven. Ryan, weak on save points. New attacking manager. Maybe Dunk's also off to Leicester if Maguire goes. And then maybe you've got a baked-in transfer with King Wilson, sort of game week 3. Is it City turn up? So it just feels like there's a lot of transfers.
Oh, no. I know there's a lot of transfers. I know there's a lot. But, I mean, that set that team up early this week. And I obviously planned to bring in Wan-Bissaka actually at some point because I do really want him in my team come game week 1. I think there's going to be a lot of people overlooking Man United this year. I'm liking the look of Wan-Bissaka in the United shirt. He's showing no signs of regressing. He's playing quite advanced as well on the right-hand side. He's getting the crosses into the box. You know what? Wan-Bissaka was a bargain of the season for me last year. He could still be the bargain of the season for this year as well. Perez is improving. I don't think Perez is improving. I agree with Tristan. I think Perez played really well for Newcastle. I think he's going to slot really well into a Leicester team, an attacking Leicester team.
Can I... Sorry to say this. I read in the comment sections on my stream earlier that some people were saying that Perez has injured his ankle and may be out for game week 1. I don't know if that's just Twitter talk.
It could well be. It's still time. This is it, guys. Don't get too hung up on your team selections at the moment. This is just banting around ideas. There's plenty of time left. There's more than 2 weeks to go. Till game week 1 actually hits us. There may be some really nice transfers that happen between now and game week 1. So yeah, of course there's going to be changes. Of course there's going to be injuries and gossip and rumors. It's just a work in progress at this stage. Don't look at my team and think for any. There's no disillusion here. That is not going to be my team game week 1. But anyway, let's talk about your team. It's up on the screen at the moment. You've got 5 at the back. I know a lot of people are talking about having 5 at the back or 5 in midfield. Interestingly, it is pretty much... There's a couple of names that I'm like, okay. So McGinn, I want to talk to you about McGinn, but I also want to look at your thoughts behind captaining Jamie Vardy. Or is that certainly not going to be the case? Oh, it's gone. Why is he gone? Ready. You kind of moved yourself out of the channel then.
Sorry, apologies for that. I thought you moved.
No, I didn't move you.
Right, okay. So, sorry, yeah, that was a bit confusing there. So I didn't turn my TV off. But anyway, I'm assuming you were talking about the weaknesses or maybe potential weaknesses in your team that you're going to change it, and then you switch to my team. So I think you were just about to highlight
McGinn, yeah. So you've sacrificed midfield basically. In a nutshell, you sacrificed well, I say you sacrificed. You got Sterling and Salah, but that's about it. So you've sacrificed in midfield with a premium, well, a majority premium set of defenders, and some decent, mid to premium price strikers. So talk me through your decision making on bringing in McGinn and having Vardy as captain with Salah and Sterling sitting there in midfield.
Okay, so I was just chatting to the guys in chat actually, and we were sort of discussing the merits of Dunk. I had Dunk in there as my 5th defender.
Are you near a fan, by the way?
That's me.
No.
I'll turn off.
Oh, yeah, okay, cheers, thank you.
This microphone has got to be the most sensitive thing I've ever... Anyway, it doesn't matter. Carry on.
So yeah, no, I quite like the 5-man defence. I think we talked about it last time. I actually like Marcel in that 3rd spot in midfield, and then someone was telling me Dunk was rubbish. So I think it really depends if Dunk leaves Brighton and goes to Leicester. If he does, I'll probably put him in that spot where Laporte is now, bring Martial or another 7.5 into the midfield. Maybe Maddison, maybe Fraser.
Okay. Yeah. Steve-O, have you got his team up in front of you?
Yeah, it's like you said, very, very high in the premium defenders there. Are you confident with having a 5-man defence? They normally don't work out.
For the first few weeks, I think that's how I want to go, but I'm not wedded to it. Just as a kind of early start where we've got a lot of doubts around Chelsea. Tottenham today, wasn't that impressed with them. I just want to kind of see who emerges. And I think it's safer to go with the defence in the first couple of weeks when you don't know.
I think even though I was listening to a particular podcast yesterday, and they were mentioning something about the fact that August has the most clean sheets, I literally pricked my ears up and I was like, oh no, I don't think that's the case. I think if anything, August probably has the most goals. So actually, that's why I've personally changed my team to a 3-5-2 at the moment, because I'm more happy to have more attacking players than I am willing to have defenders. But I mean, have you got a strategy to come out of this when you decide to go more attackers, so to speak? Who are you wanting to downgrade? I don't want to make a transfer game week 2. That's my only strategy. I don't want to make a game week a transfer game week 2, and then have a 2 transfers so I can maybe switch out. I don't know. That's why I brought Vardy, and I thought maybe it's smart to have a bit more money up front, just in case you need to go up to Kane, Aubameyang, maybe even switch out for Aguero that no one really likes at the minute.
Okay. So
downgrading Laporte, and then some boost in either whether in the mids or forwards.
Yeah. So already you're thinking about adapting from a 5 at the back to compensate, to make a more balanced team. I think a lot of criticisms of people with 5 at the back is that they can't be greatly flexible when they're looking at bringing in higher priced midfield or striking options. Yeah, normally you probably have to take a -4 or just kind of chop and change other positions to accommodate. Now, so your thoughts on Zinchenko then? Is he going to be
for 2 weeks?
Yeah. I probably will. I don't know. I probably will have him in my team. To be fair, he's a cheap way into the Man City defense. But it's for me. It's a case of, do I play a 4-5-1 formation or a 5-4-1? That's the 2 formations that I have looked at. I've not looked at a 5-3-2. I just like to have value in midfield. Because like last season, I think a lot of points are available in midfield. Obviously, with the likes of Salah, and Sterling, and obviously these great options like Zaha, Sigurdsson. People bring in Lucas Moura, even though I'm not entirely convinced with Lucas Moura, but I think that these players for less money than Vardy and Wilson can offer great points and great attacking potential. And some people class them as strikers. So, and I can see why, because obviously Salah plays really advanced. Sterling I don't know how true it is, but there was rumours that Pep was kind of hinting that Sterling was going to be some sort of an off striker or something like that for City. But, I mean, it's Man City as a whole. I mean, they've got so many players playing midfield and attack that, you've always run in the risk. That's why I don't like seeing teams with like Bernardo Silva or Sane in, because I just think you can't guarantee minutes there. I like seeing Greenwood on your bench. I do think Greenwood could be good this year.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the way I look at this is I see midfield and defence currently as almost the same pool of players, because I think that if just that one you've got up on screen, the only two real defenders there are Coleman and maybe Zinchenko. I think Laporte has shown that he's got enough attacking potential to be almost considered like a kind of 6.5 million midfielder. And then Van Dijk is going to get more headers than last year. I'm pretty sure of that. I think he's sort of in a way been underperforming. And then Alexander-Arnold was the kind of star of the show. So for me, there's only really two defenders there who I would have had, in the old sort of system.
Well,
so whether they, go on.
Sorry. No, carry on. Sorry.
No, and just that. I mean, again, I'm not wedded to McGinn. I was just trying something out today to see what that would look like if I put Laporte back there. Maybe, yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think Zinchenko is a transfer waiting to be made, and at some point you're going to need to rely on your bench.
I would probably do Laporte to Wan-Bissaka. That's me. If you're going to go 5 at the back, I'd go Wan-Bissaka.
He's looked great. I mean, it's just that Chelsea game, and then maybe after that Chelsea game.
It's only Chelsea. But it's the team is screaming out bonus point magnets. Like a lot of these players do attract bonus points. Obviously, Salah historically doesn't, but the back line especially, Van Dijk, Laporte, Alexander-Arnold. I mean, there's some they had some monster hauls last season, and I can definitely see. I mean, they're mainstays in a lot of teams. It's just that McGinn pick that for me is kind of like, okay, it's kind of like throwing the team out of balance. It feels like it's really lacking. It's just lacking in midfield. It just needs a bit of teeth in midfield. That's how I want to say it anyway. But I just want to go. I just want to quickly go through some of the comments in chat. The Boone is on about a Wesley wagon. That penalty that Wesley took for Villa was absolutely sublime. If you haven't seen it, then I recommend watching it. It's on Twitter. Liverpool and Nuno Santos says Liverpool and City will concede more goals than last season. The other attacking teams' attacking options across the league are getting stronger. I mean, Liverpool's defense, City's defense, they're quite sound, they're quite strong, but I'd rather invest in midfield than invest in defense. Like, that's my opinion this year, and I know that there's people that are going to be like all for, the 5 at the back, like we've got here with Ruddy's team. But I don't know. I just think that you are kind of relying on a lot of circumstantial points that are going to be coming from corners. Obviously, I'm not talking about Alexander-Arnold. He's pretty much a winger, but certainly, I don't know. I'm not convinced that Coleman is going to return that many points in the first few games. Especially now, obviously with Zuma going. I don't know. I'm not convinced. That's me, Steve-O. You got any final things to say about Reddy's team?
Well, what I can say is that based on this team, I've just put up a poll on Twitter. So if you want to go to @EliteFPL, I just quite simply put, do you think that premium defenders are better than their equivalent prices as the midfielders, basically? So go over to there and vote on that poll on Twitter. So I've only put it up for like 30 minutes. So let's just see what the public seem to think. Would they rather have basically premium defenders ahead of, say, 6.5, 7.5 midfielders? Me personally, no, but that's just me. I just think that again, it's that line, isn't it, of what you said all that time back about a lottery. I just think that there's more of a higher percentage that, say, someone like Fraser is going to get you some form of returns than, I don't know, Laporte, Van Dijk, Alexander-Arnold on a more regular, consistent basis. Say that again.
Yeah, I do like Fraser. I think he's been in my team a lot. I think you're right. I think Fraser's dangerous. This was me playing around a bit earlier, so you just caught the end of that, really.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, but I think Vardy for me is the big question mark there, because he takes a lot of money out of that midfield, and is it worth it? Do you drop that down to a 6-5?
It's exactly the same. My first draft had Vardy, and I really, really wanted really much to have Vardy in, but I also kind of kept waking up each morning thinking, no, I really want Kane in my team. But you can't have them all. It's not like Pokemon. You can't collect every single player. You've got to choose a balanced team. That's, you can't just have money invested in a front line, because it's gonna impact on your back and midfield.
That links me into a question that I want to ask you, which is, do you pick a team? This is for both of you. Do you pick a team for the opening 4 to say 6 fixtures, or do you pick a team which is going to be kind of based across the whole of the season?
Well, it's not obviously based across the whole of the season, but I look at the first 6 to 8 fixtures, really. And then, I mean, a lot of people do or have been talking about early wildcards. I wildcarded quite early last year. I think if you get at the right time and you wildcard at the right moment, it's a lot of monetary value to be gained, especially if your team isn't, performing. And you will start to know quite soon what players are performing in their respective teams. So yeah, I certainly would set up for the first 4 to 6 game weeks at the very least, and then go from there. I think that's what a lot of people are doing, to be fair. That's why we're seeing a lot of Leicester, a lot of Bournemouth, a lot of Man City.
You see, I personally don't. As you can see how blinking hot it is, I'm just having to wipe the sweat off me. But I actually go into every season picking it based on the actual season rather than like the first opening fixtures. That's why my latest draft was based more on the opening fixtures than the across the whole season. So hence the triple Bournemouth attack. But I think that's, for me, probably a better approach than, say, having Harry Kane from the start or whatever, because it's just going to destroy the rest of the setup and what I want to get, really. And FPL Boona made a point that Harry Kane's just not looking that great in pre-season, so to speak. So
I'd second that. I saw him today. He looked a bit out of it.
Yeah, and Lucas Moura does seem to be someone that when he plays gets you the points, and I'm willing to take that at the moment, that punt versus Aston Villa.
Steve, a quick question for you. Did you say you got triple Bournemouth then?
As it stands right now, yeah. I doubt it will happen, but yeah.
What are you planning to do on game week 3 when they face City?
God knows. Probably take a -4.
It's gonna wildcard game week 3, aren't you, Steve-O?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really looked into. Well, I have, but I'm actually serious. I'm genuinely seriously thinking of stealing one of our regular contributors, Boa Rice's idea of potentially going with a premium striker in Aubameyang as an example. Have a cheap defender like Ake. But this is his idea. Play Ake against the 2 promoted teams, Aubameyang against basically 2 of the worst teams in the Premier League, and then swap Aubameyang out for Jamie Vardy and bring in Trent Alexander-Arnold, whoever, for Ake. And then you've got Vardy for the really good fixtures along with a top premium defender. And I think that strategy is phenomenal. I'm seriously thinking, I'm sorry, Boa Rice, but that is something I'm actually seriously considering. So, yeah, in answer to your question, the triple Bournemouth attack is really aimed at the opening 2 fixtures. And then when it comes to Man City, it'd be a case of probably getting rid of King and which other player in my team isn't performing that well. And then have 2 free transfers, maybe even do a mini wildcard and do that -4. And like Jason said, base it on the players which haven't performed across, obviously, the first 2 games.
Yeah, that sounds smart. I mean, one question I got, I suppose, for that then is what I noticed last year was that Fraser and Wilson linked up really well. So often they kind of matched each other for points when they did well. So you could almost say I could do one of them or double up and really kind of take a risk. And then Brooks and maybe King sort of tended to get sort of points in the same matches. So I'm not sure if that's scientifically proven, but that's kind of what I seem to
But the
notice.
difference,
Sorry. Yeah, carry on.
the difference is that last season, Wilson was, he was a million more expensive than Fraser, or 1.5 more expensive than Fraser. Fraser was only what, 5.5 or something.
Yeah. He was,
and you were getting the value. Yeah, you were getting the value out of those two players. Whereas now they're very similar priced, and they're going to be quite highly owned. And I'm going to be somebody that I always like to go with. If they're both similarly priced, it's a case of, right, well, if they're going to be matching each other's points and they're the same kind of ownership, then I'm probably going to get rid of the one that gets less theoretically points wise, which is Wilson. So I'd probably keep Fraser, and ironically Wilson's more expensive by 0.5. So whereas last year you're getting your value for money out of two cheap players.
It was fantastic last year, but I think when they're so cheap you're tempted to bench them. I benched Fraser, and I benched him for his 18-point haul, and it really hurt. That was the first time I benched him. And I don't know, that's the danger.
How long have you been playing the game for?
I've had 2 seasons. The first one was a bit of a kind of warm-up season. I took it a bit more seriously. I got 180,000 last year, but I had 41 hits, so that was ridiculous.
Wow. I mean, how I don't recognise you in the Discord or anything. I mean, I apologise if you're a regular, but how did you come across the Elite FPL podcast and obviously the Discord as well?
Yeah, we talked it through a little bit the other day. I mean, I've sort of been on a couple of weeks, so sort of saw a couple of yours on catch up, and then I just started getting involved in the live chat. So it's very new for me. So thanks, guys. It's been great.
Thank you.
How are you finding the way it's changing your thought processes? Is it helping or hindering?
Well, just today I've had a bit of banter in the waiting room it's just brilliant. Everyone's got very different ways of looking at it.
And that's the beauty of the game. I mean, like, how boring would it be if there was just? I mean, yeah, there is like 9 or 10 players that everyone seems to be focusing on, but if it was literally the same team posted in, and that's a great thing, because I'm looking through the Rate My Team section in Discord, and there's a lot of different teams, different formations, different ideas coming out of it, and I do think that it bodes well for game week 1 that you're not going to see similar sorts of scores. There's nothing worse than seeing everyone on the same score game week 1. But yeah, thank you ever so much in a mini league. Anyway, thank you ever so much, Ruddy, for jumping in and joining us, and we look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Cheers, guys. Thanks very much. Take care.
Now. Thank you. So yeah, I just want to talk about Discord, because last night I introduced some new roles into Discord, and I think you even, Steve-O, have seen that there's a section where you can actually assign a role. So when you join Discord, you can actually react on your club's badge to receive your Discord team colours. And Man United's red, obviously, the Norwich is green, and Wolves is gold, and such, and even Burnley's like a scarlety colour, and it seems to be going down well. So chat, if you let me know if you're enjoying that feature. It's kind of made Discord quite colourful, and I know that people that maybe don't necessarily support a Premier League club can kind of get their name coloured to their respective championship or below teams. So yeah, give us some feedback on that, if you like it or not. We're going to carry on with the call-ins, but I just want to actually say that we've got somebody in the waiting room who I want to have a little chat with. His name's FPL Boona. And for those of you who don't know, FPL Boona is a Tottenham fan. And there was a game today. It was a really important game, massive game. It was a final. And it was a game between Man United and Tottenham. I just want to find out if Boona watched it. I couldn't watch it because I was at work, unfortunately. I only got the score. The scores come through. So Boona, I'm going to bring you in. Hello, Boona. You're live on Elite FPL Radio. How you feeling? Oh no, he's gone. Does he not want to? Boona, do you not want to talk to me?
Don't want to talk to you, Jason.
You don't want to talk. You don't, I mean, I just want to sit. It's. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good, mate. Like, what's the cricket score right now?
No. You watched the game, I presume.
No, I didn't. I was actually driving. We was on voice hangouts, and I had Brett giving us live commentary.
Okay. So, well, I didn't get to watch it, but I'll certainly look at watching the highlights later on today because for those who don't know, I haven't had much chance to sort anything out after coming home from work. But yeah, look forward to watching it. I'm sure that it was a good game. So you going to be chilling out with us this evening, or you got other things going?
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy to stay, mate. I'm here for as long as you need.
Cool, excellent. That's fine. We'll bring in another caller.
Get Colin the Moonwalker. He's the one that's from Guyana in South America, I think.
All right, we'll get the South American in.
I've put his team up as well.
Colin the Moonwalker, all the way from South America, I believe. Are you there? Are you dragging him in as well, Steve-O?
No.
Oh, I think they keep leaving. Colin, are you there?
You left again.
Hello, Colin, are you there?
Yeah.
Are you wanting? He keeps leaving. You keep leaving the channel. Do you not want to talk to us? Yeah, I don't think he wants to talk to us.
What a shame.
All right, so we're getting Gianpaolo. I don't think Gianpaolo hasn't joined us before. So Gianpaolo, Gianpaolo, are you around, Gianpaolo? Are you able to talk to us?
He's a regular, I know.
Gianpaolo, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear. Can you hear me?
I'm right. Yeah.
Cool. Could you turn your speakers down a little bit because I can hear some echoing.
Yeah, I just turned it off.
Oh, brilliant! Have you got the stream off? Oh, yeah, the stream on. So welcome to the stream, Gianpaolo.
Sounds like a here we go. Steve-O's accent. Guess it sounds South African.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, he actually gets one right.
Have you got us coming out of your speakers? Because I can hear an echo. I can hear myself back.
No, I've got it straight from the cell phone.
Oh, okay. Maybe just turn it down a little bit, maybe, because we can hear some feedback loops.
All right, is that better?
1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's better. Can't hear myself now. So, Khandet, Gianpaolo, how you doing?
No, good. Just having a few dilemmas with this certain players you want to fit into your side, and you can't get them all in.
Yeah. There's always that dilemma. Have you posted your team in the Rate My Team?
I'm trying to look for it, but there's.
It was early. I can do it again.
Yeah.
If you want to repost it, we can talk about it. I'll quickly scroll through, but I can't see it. There's lots of other teams that have been posted in there since.
I think it's when Steve was trying to stream earlier before you went off for the shortest stream ever.
I know.
Yeah.
So
that was you all joined me for the shortest stream I've ever done. I think normally it takes me half an hour just to kind of warm up. So yeah, everybody that joined me earlier on, there is a half an hour stream from earlier on if you want to watch.
I found it.
Basically me ranting, which is fantastic. But so
Gianpaolo, you're a Man United fan. I know that because your team colours in Discord. So we got your team up here, and the first thing I see is you got Mason Greenwood. Okay, it's fine. So your team, you got Ryan in goal, Alexander-Arnold, Van Dijk, Zinchenko, Digne, similar to me, of course. You got Salah captain, Sigurdsson, Fraser, and Sterling. With Tammy Abraham up front. So and King. So first of all, a 4-4-2. What made you go with a 4-4-2?
I was just looking. There's so much value at the back, but I didn't want to be locked in at 5 at the back because I thought if you got Coleman and Digne, if Everton concede, then straight away you're down. Then thinking who's going to be locked in for Chelsea. You're never going to have 2 City defenders because you're going to want options with City attackers. So I thought four across the midfield. I had Calvert-Lewin for a while up top, but I'm not confident in him delivering. And I thought Chelsea's fixtures look quite good, so that's why I thought Tammy Abraham might be.
Okay.
If he's the Chelsea striker, but now we're gonna have to see.
No, I could definitely see why. I mean, Tammy Abraham is. I think who's the Chelsea fan, Steve-O, that we've had on talking about Tammy Abraham.
Dereco.
Dereco, that's it. Dereco has been singing Abraham's praises. He thinks that he would fit more into a Lampard team, and I'm inclined to agree. So yeah, I mean, other than a tough away game, obviously the first game of the season away at United, I think you're right. The fixtures do ease up after that, and yeah, I mean, not many teams with him in. Could be a bit of a bargain up front there. I see you gone with King as well. So it's just Fraser and King from Bournemouth. I think 2 Bournemouth is just the right amount. I don't think you necessarily need to go with 3. I think it's a bit too many. But Digne is one where I think people are now questioning. Obviously with the weakened Everton defence, and there's value to be found. I would go with Wan-Bissaka if it was me.
But my issue is now Zuma going back to Chelsea, and Idris Gueye hasn't he just signed for PSG?
Yeah,
Is Delph going to fill in that role now?
I don't know. Yeah, I just don't think that. I don't know if the appeal has kind of waned a little bit personally for the Everton defence. I mean, Digne can still get you good returns, on set pieces of and attacking returns with assists. But let's be honest, everyone first and foremost we look at clean sheet potential in a lot of the defenders, and I just don't know if that potential is really there now with Digne.
Yeah, so let's see, just play, let's see what happens.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking in a few weeks' time, Chilwell, when Leicester's fixtures ease up a bit, I think for a wild card, I think he could be a good option. I want to wait and see that's why I haven't included any Leicester players. There's no Vardy, no Perez, Tielemans or Maddison, so play it once for that wild card, see who's performing for Leicester, and then maybe try slot if they're doing well two Leicester players in, maybe an attacker and a defender.
Yeah, no, I definitely I can see that. So what sort of so you're thinking of an early wild card? What sort of week would that be? You think?
Just see how it goes. Like, yes, you would like to keep it going as long as possible if your team's doing all right, but maybe between 4 and 6. But if you could keep it going till like 10, then that would be great. But you never know, someone, you might have injuries and suspensions.
No, that's fair. That's a fair point. Whereabouts in South Africa are you calling from, by the way?
Cape Town.
You're in Cape Town. Oh, brilliant! I went to the waterfront last year. We quite often go there. It's a beautiful place, and it's great to have you on the show.
All right. No, thanks for having me.
No, thank you ever so much, all the way from Cape Town. Thank you, Jan Paolo.
Okay. Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Now, speak soon.
Cheers. Thank you.
Look forward to having you on again.
Can I just mention there is a game on this evening, the Europa League qualifying game for you know who. It's Wolves. They are playing a full-strength team, barring Jimenez. And at the moment, it's 1-0, and it's that man, Diego Jota, scoring for Wolves. So that'll be the next bandwagon to jump onto. He's done really well this pre-season. So the lineup is Patricio, Ryan Bennett, Cody, and Willy Boley in the back 3. And then Traore, Dendoncker, Neves, Coutinho, and Johnny in the 5-man midfield. And then Gibbs, White, and Jota up front. So, yeah, 1 at the moment. And
I liked Jota last season. I had him in my team at parts of last season, and he's I used to I don't know why, but I used to refer to him as like a budget Hazard. He's pretty tricky and he's good on his feet. He's technically gifted, He's quick, and now he's playing in an advanced role, and obviously now up front. I mean, yeah, the eyes are going to be on him. I can smell a bandwagon there. But yeah, it's pre-season. Let's not get carried away, but certainly one that's going to be on the radars of a lot of FPL managers for sure.
I have to just to interject. I'm just looking over Everton's fixtures last season, and I've got to say, I'm impressed by their defensive record, to be fair. And I think, even though we're all jumping on the bandwagon of Everton defenders already, I think looking at the amount of clean sheets they got last season, and I'm not even talking about the end of the season, I'm talking starting kind of near the beginning-ish. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. I certainly think that actually, I think despite the way, or Guy, however you pronounce his name, I think could be very, very good options.
Yeah, I'm just going to read a few comments out in chat. There's quite a few people chatting away there, and we've got Papa Smurf in chat. We've got
on the show, Papa.
Ramsey Sinclair's in chat. Chavins there. Vince Chapman. Daily Llama's obviously here. We've got Brew. A lot of the Discorders in chat. We've got Arioki's back in chat, and Alex Summerson. Right, so we got so apparently the Tottenham Man United game was pretty dead. Would you agree with that, chat? Was it quite pretty dead? Obviously 3 goals in it, so it can't have been that dead. Did you add Bournemouth to the Discord? Said Ari Hiroki. Yeah, I did. I did add Bournemouth. Now you can choose Bournemouth as a role. I don't know why I didn't. I must have missed Bournemouth out. I don't know why. John Hatch is in chat. A transfer plan seems smart. Something changes, make a new plan. Absolutely. Don't go into it blind, but also don't go into it just because other people are telling you to go into it. Go into it because you're playing the game. You play the game ultimately. Santo says, I can really see Ake joining Man City. Man City cannot start the season with John Stones. No chance. He's terrible. Nuno Santo, it could very possibly happen. I don't rate John Stones, but again, I don't think Otamendi is going to be in the forefront of Pep's mind either. So yeah, it could happen. Ake would be a great signing, I think, for Man City. Everyone's laughing at you sweating away as well, by the way. In chat, I'm trying to catch up with everyone else. Wilson can downgrade Game Week 3 to Chelsea striker if on Haller. Haller, yes, that's 0.5 too much. Interested to see what Cotrone's price is, says Millsy. God, it could be weeks before FPL do that. Ryan Seacham says, anyone watching the Wolves game? No, I'm streaming. But maybe some people in there are watching it. I think we're kind of cool. Anyone see Kolasinac saving Ozil's car from getting jacked? Okay. I'm not going to read out all that. I don't know what that's about. The problem with Yotto in the Premier League is with Wolves have just splashed on a new striker, which means he'll be removed back to midfield, but they won't play 3 up.
Have you seen that new striker's record though, Jason? It's woeful.
I don't know. I think Jota
3 goals in 34 games last season. So
Cotrone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think about that as being a threat to Jota. I think Jota last season was a great asset for Wolves, and I'm surprised we didn't see any of the big 6 teams looking at him, to be honest with you.
Same.
I really am. If United went in for him, I'd be loving it. But anyway.
Can I just bring up this point with both yourself and Boona? I've asked this before. I'm going to ask this again. I've just looked at someone's team. So in this case, it was Millsy YT in the Rate My Team, and he's just asked our thoughts on his team. I'm not going to specifically give thoughts on the team per se, but what I will say is that just a non-playing substitute bench, and I know Boone is doing this, yourself, Jason, me, etc. We all seem to be only going with, for instance, one playing midfielder in Dendoncker. Are we not worried that we're underusing our bench players, or do you just think that, nope, throw all your money into your first team 11? Because I know for a fact that we're going to need our subs to come off the bench, and if we got nobody coming off the bench, it's just going to be a complete waste of time.
I see Nketiah there, and I see Greenwood there, and I think they're 2 kind of fringe breakthrough players that could. I mean, dare I say it? I mean, Greenwood could play a good portion of the Chelsea game. You know, there's been hints of it. I think Greenwood's on the cusp of becoming, a candidate to be in the first team on a regular basis. I do like him. I do think I like him. I rate him as a player. I think a lot of the United fans would like that as well. I mean, like I keep banging on about it. Historically, we want to keep pushing the young talent through. We don't want to keep just buying, players for 80, 90 million. We want to be pushing, our academy players through. And if we can, and obviously Greenwood is one of those that, Solskjaer is going to have to take that decision on, and I would love it. But Nketiah as well for Arsenal. I think there's a lot of Arsenal fans that talk, their fan channel, Arsenal Fan TV. There's a lot of people bigging him up, and he could get some minutes. I don't know how many minutes, but the thing is, you've got to ask yourself is that they are bargain basement players, but they've got the potential. They've got the potential of getting minutes and getting a goal.
I mean, we've just had him in chat. I mean, Ruddy has just said he's just put up a quick team regarding having a actual real playing bench spot to cover for potential weaknesses in, for example, Zinchenko if he wasn't playing. And his example that he's put up is like Willian. I just think that having such a high price player on your bench, I wouldn't do. I just mean like having like say 4.5 playing players on the bench is better than having risk 4.5 players on the bench. I'd rather have, I don't know, Dunk as an example on the bench than a 4 million player like Martin Kelly, for example. But again, it's trying to fit these players in. I'm fully aware of that. It's difficult, very difficult. Should we get someone else on? What about you, Boona? What are your thoughts on that?
The problem you have is, yes, there's good value in 4.5 defenders. However, I feel like a lot of the value this year, because of the way that the game has priced players, is in defence. So a lot of teams are going 4 and 5 in defence, which is, I'm seeing a lot of, including myself, seeing a lot of teams with 4-5-1s, stuff like that, which leaves you having to, scupper for those budget forwards. But I actually do think, like Jason said, the likes of Greenwood, I've got Kelly on my bench. I think both of those are capable of getting minutes. And we were speaking in the Discord earlier today, and there's a few, United supporters who were saying that, Greenwood could well start. And, it's not impossible that he does. Like, it could well happen.
I'll be disappointed. I'll be disappointed if Greenwood doesn't play a decent part game week 1. I would. I think he's earned the spot. Pre-season he's playing really well, and it's a wait and see. But I'll be disappointed if he doesn't. But let's get someone else on. There's a lot of people waiting in the waiting room. Guys, get in Discord. The Discord link is in the link in description and also on the screen. Flashes up every now and again underneath Steve-O's webcam. But we're going to bring on. We have Ryan, who's been waiting patiently in the waiting room for a while now. Let's bring in Ryan. 3, 2, 1. Ryan, you're live now on air with Elite FPL Radio. Are you there? People sitting in the waiting room with their mic muted. Ryan, your mic's muted, my friend. Can you hear me? And 3, and 2, and 1. Okay, Ryan's obviously not there. Let's put him in the hangout because he's not in.
On BIWE, he's just posted up his team and Rate My Team, and he is there in the waiting room. May as well get him on.
Okay. Hello, BIWE. I don't know how to pronounce that. Welcome to the Elite FPL Radio Show. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you fine. You just posted your team in the Rate My Team section on Discord. We've got it up on the screen now. Steve, you want to go ahead?
It's the classic FPL community template team. Is that what you base it on, BIWE, or is this your genuine thought? I mean, if I'm absolutely honest with you, I'm probably going to end up with this team anyway, come game week 1, because I've been banging on about this team since the game launched. So what are your thoughts on that straight away, this being very FPL community template based?
Yeah, I guess it's a template. But I didn't. I don't think I really copied it from. I guess I got most of the players just by checking the points and comparing it to the play time and trying to look at the prices and see which players have the most value.
I see that you've got Jota up front. Was he in your team before he scored tonight?
Yeah,
Okay.
but he's like the one that I'm not sure of.
Why
Because
are you not sure because
his
of Wolves fixtures and also the European? They're traveling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I posted that yesterday or something is no one scared about that they will do exactly like Burnley did 2 years ago or something.
I need to say this. I'm sick to death of people, not you, but even experts talking about Burnley struggling. Of course they're struggling. We're rubbish. We've got no players.
Yeah, but I mean, I compared to
We're
the
rubbish.
year when
You know,
I compared
Sean
to the
Dyche
year when
decided
we
to play
played.
players which weren't even first teamers. You know, he played 5 or 6 of the first teamers. He wasn't sticking to his usual plan of. He never takes cup competition serious or anything. It drives me up the wall. So this talk of comparing it Wolves to Burnley, it drives me up the wall. It really does, because Wolves are absolutely quality, in my opinion.
Okay.
But
yeah.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I like you can watch the streams back. Last year, I was bigging up Wolves all the way from the start of the season. I thought they're going to have a great year. They got a great team, great manager. They just had a little bit of a thin squad. Obviously, the subs weren't the best, but to be fair, they didn't do too bad for injuries. They kind of went through the season without having too many injuries, and Ryan Bennett was there at a bargain. We had Jota. We had Doherty. Who can forget Doherty?
I mean, even Martini, for crying out loud, a Champions League winner playing for Wolves.
Yeah.
This is a player that, I mean, Boona will be able to back me up on this. What was it, 2, 3, maybe 4 years ago? Spurs just couldn't get him. And even at the time, I was like, how can they not get a player like this? It's ridiculous because they're asking for so much money.
So we got Norwegian in chat saying that there's poor sound on the stream. Is there bad sound quality?
The Discord. I think it's the Discord sound quality, because sometimes I can't hear the people through my headphones alone.
Yeah. It's fine. Obviously, we've got people calling in with their mobile phones and on their laptops, so we can't always guarantee the audio quality there. But is there there's not much I can talk about with your team, to be honest with you. B. But I'm just going to call you.
So, can I ask you a question?
Boo. Yeah, go for it.
The 2 players that I'm concerned about is Diego Jota and Ryan. And how sure are we that Zinchenko is going to start?
I think he's got. I would say the probability is that he will be starting. I think he's the front runner. I think Pep will play him over Angelino, and Mendy's not quite back yet and fit. So yeah, I would say he's safe for the early part of the season. So I think the value is in there with him. Whether or not he'll stay, whether or not he'll stay in that role come game week 3, come game week 4. And onwards, we'll have to wait and see. But I know he finished off the season quite strong there, and Pep's been talking highly of him. But he talks highly of a lot of players. But yeah, I would be confident early on in the season that he'll play.
I think he stays there for a while, Zinchenko. Like Mendy, he's not even had a pre-season yet, and I don't think he's back in training yet either. So he's going to take at least 3-4 weeks to bed in properly. I
see Mendy, and by all means, you can shoot me down right now if I'm way out of the ballpark here, but I kind of see Mendy as kind of a Balotelli figure.
Correct.
I just think he's obviously got a bit of an ego to him. He's on social media. He's posting away. He's probably a bit of a character in the dressing room. Maybe a disrupted influence. Obviously,
well, I heard it on a radio channel the other day. That's exactly what. Apparently, in the Netflix film, whatever they did, it shows that Mendy does seem a bit immature, a bit disruptive to the dressing room. Not in a bad way, but with that childish kind of mindset. So maybe you're onto something there, and Pep just doesn't like it, doesn't like the attitude.
He showed
Yeah,
it at the end of
yeah.
last season too, though, didn't he? Like Mendy was fit, I believe, for at least last 6 to 10 games, but he preferred Zinchenko there.
Yeah,
That's-
I don't know about you, but when I was watching Mendy last year, obviously he started off with an absolute like crazy with assists, clean sheets, and I know that one of the things I did notice though, he was pretty questionable when defending. Like his positioning, he didn't know when to kind of track back. He didn't kind of like, for me, it just seemed like he was all for going forward. And I think Pep, he's probably picked up on that as well as all the other mitigating circumstances around Mendy. I think you're right. I think a lot of people are kind of in their minds, they're kind of thinking that Pep's kind of shuffled him back behind Zinchenko now.
Yeah, and even though Angelino's had a few games in pre-season, he's not pulled up any trees. So I don't think he's as much a worry. I think he's just given him some extra games to see if he can build his confidence up and improve, but nothing more.
Yeah. So to answer your question, Boo or Boo?
Biv. Yes, Biv.
Boo. How do I say it?
Yes, say Biv.
Biv. Okay, to answer your question, Biv, it's a yes for me for Zinchenko.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Then I thought then I can upgrade Ryan if I go down to Zinchenko.
You
and
can.
my other question was about Jota. I think last season he scored, was it 140 points, and he's 6.5, and I'm thinking about going with Azpilicueta instead. He's been scoring 160 for 3 seasons.
Steve-O's the man to ask for that, because he's all about Azpilicueta.
And they have the match against United in the first round, but after that they have quite good fixtures. So I don't know. It feels like he's a good choice instead of a 6.56 attacking player. But what do you think?
Well, again, what Bruno was talking about was it's that question: do you want to go 5 at the back or 5 midfield? Obviously, you're going to take that money out. You can have 1 up front. I think a lot of people would be split on it. Really, I think for that 1 million, for that million or more that you're going to save, you probably can just invest it in defense, and bring in. You could bring in pretty much a selection of players. You can either go. I wouldn't go for necessarily any Leicester or Everton. I would go with probably Wan-Bissaka. That's all I'm going to talk about is Wan-Bissaka. Go for Wan-Bissaka. Going in. But thank you ever so much, Biv, for being with us tonight, and we'll hopefully speak to you again.
Thank you. Love it.
Cheers. Now.
Thank you.
Cheers, dude.
I just want to say now, this room is probably rose about 2 degrees since I started the stream. I'm literally sweating. It's crazy. You can what?
Can I just make this point that Buse, whatever, said just then? Another thing that there's something that I wanted to.
Did you just call him Buse?
Buse, yeah.
His name's Biv.
Biv. Well, Biv. I was going to do a thing on my show earlier on about things that I'm sick to death of hearing now, and Bib just brought it up. It's so and so has got X amount of points over the course of X amount of seasons, and this player only got this amount of points across the whole of the season. It doesn't matter. Crying out loud, man. It's all down to what position these particular people play. Like I said, when it comes to defenders, you're basing it on what? Clean sheet potential and everything. Most of the time, it is a lottery with defenders, depending on which team they play for, but give or take. Azpilicueta is somebody who will get you decent clean sheet returns, but attacking-wise, no. Whereas Diego Jota, it's that he's going to get you I reckon he's one of those. He's going to be one of those players that could be getting you a goal or an assist every other game. I think Jota's going to be in for a really good season, personally.
Okay, yeah.
Well, I don't think you can compare the two.
Well, it's a wait and see for me. I do think he's Jota is an outstanding talent. It's just that I'm waiting to see how Wolves perform. That's all. Obviously, tricky fixtures, and there's going to be a lot of fatigue as well with the travelling that's involved. But let's scroll down and rate my team and have a look to see who's posting, who's active. Notorious Nerd's there. I think he's been waiting since the beginning. I think it's only true that we bring him in. Let's have a look.
He's changed his team a bit. Very odd.
Was he posted it recently?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I see.
Jason?
Yeah.
When Notorious comes on, tell him to speak a bit louder because he's usually a little bit quiet.
Has he sorted his microphone out? I know he had issues with his microphone.
Not sure. It was still quite quiet today when we was in Hangouts.
Okay, let's give it a go.
All right.
Yeah, no worries. Notorious Nerd, you're on air on Elite FPL Radio. Can you hear me?
Hello, guys.
Hello, welcome to the stream. I've got your team up on the screen at the moment. I see that you've got some interesting picks. You've gone with a very broad and you spread your money out a bit, haven't you? That's what you've kind of done here.
That's what I always wanted.
Yeah. So
have was setting for captain.
So talk us through it then. Talk us through the Lacazette, the Origi pick. Obviously Sane. I imagine by the look of this, you've been watching a bit of pre-season games. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, for pre-season it seems like Sane is like, I think he has a lot of has plans for him in the long term, and he's been doing well in that left-hand side. So he's playing really well. I think like people say that he's looking good, better than Sterling as well. Like I don't know. I mean,
he's got a point. He's got a point to prove, hasn't he? He's got a point to prove to Pep. Obviously, Pep left him out a lot of games last year. There's been talk of him moving away from City. Do you think is different this year than from last year, where he was coming off the bench and more of a bench player for Pep? Do you think that this this pre-season he's kind of earned himself a first team starting position in that Man City team? Because where would you see him fitting in, and who would he replace?
I think since Mendy is not in the team, like, so from the left hand side, like, he's a really good option in that team, and he provides a lot of width and something like at times City were lacking when he was not playing. So I think the fact that he's still in the Man City team and they haven't sold him suggests that like Pep still has a like role for him. So
okay, a few people in chat are obviously commenting on this as well, because they're obviously concerned that you've got a lot of rotation risk. I mean, Zorhawk in chat is, I mean, Origi, Lacazette isn't always guaranteed full games. Sane is a question mark for me. There's no evidence to show that he's going to be featuring, majority of games, starting games. And I would just say that I can see what you've done here. You've gone to spread your money out a bit more and gone for the less expensive options for the teams that the respective players are in. But I fear that in doing so, that you are going to have players that are playing 15, 20, 30 minutes as opposed to getting those 90-minute playing points. I just think that what you're doing is you're overthinking a little bit and I think you're overthinking in the wrong direction. But that's my opinion, and I just wanted to give you my advice, because that's what I'm assuming that's what you want to hear. You just want to hear my advice. You want to hear Steve-O's advice. I just think that
looking at the preseason,
I think it does look
enough minutes.
I'm sure you're going to be tinkering with it between now and game week 1, but there's about 5 or 6 players there that I would be thinking about moving out. I mean, I wouldn't be looking at burning defenders myself. I mean, Wan-Bissaka's only 1 mil more than Taylor.
It's going to be a 3-5. Taylor is going to stay on the.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. 3-5-2. My apologies. So yeah.
3-5.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, yeah. I think there's room for improvement in that team myself. Steve-O, you've got it up on screen. Do you want to give your thoughts on this?
I'm just going to air the views of you, although I don't like that. I'm not going to even mention Greenwood, but Origi and Lacazette, awful. I'm sorry, Notorious. I just think absolutely awful. I could be proven wrong when Lacazette goes and gets a hat-trick versus Newcastle and Origi gets a double against Norwich. But I just think for me, I'm somebody that likes to play the game with players which are key to their teams and are virtually guaranteed starters. I don't really want to be swapping and changing throughout the season. And Origi, you're going to be taking him out after...
It's safe bets, isn't it? That's what you're trying to go with. It's like there's risk factors where even I consider getting maybe one, maximum two players. Like Steve-O talks about punts and maybe bringing in saying something like I don't know. Dan James. Dan James is a bit of a punt, isn't he? Or any other Man United player to mention. Or even Azpilicueta is kind of not seen in most teams. But then you've got those risks. You've gone from a punt to a risk because and I think you don't need to take those risks. Not in game week 1. That's
at the beginning of the season, I guess like there's less rotation. And I feel like apart from Origi, like the rest of the team, like I think they're going to start beginning of this first month. I think they're going to get like their starts.
Okay, I mean that's if you
comes in later on.
If you genuinely think that, and you're gonna fall back on the wild card, if you do genuinely think that these players are going to feature a good proportion of the starting games of the season, then I'm not going to try and convince you otherwise, because that's your choice. Everyone's got their own choice, and I'm just giving my advice. And I do see why you've picked these kind of cheaper alternatives, but I just think that maybe do it one or two players. But I certainly would. I mean, if you're going to do it to one or two, and use the other money to upgrade your defense. I just think that
I can't see much.
Jason, I'll be back in a minute, mate.
Okay, no worries, Bruno. I mean, Dinier's a question mark now. Is he gonna? I mean, how are you feeling about this? Is this? No, is it? Okay.
I'm pretty comfortable with the defense, I guess. Like he's play and like he's got those attacking.
He's got attacking potential, yeah. He's got attacking potential, but there's what I mean by the question marks. Is the question marks is uncertainty on his potential to get clean sheets now with Gay and Zuma obviously not being a part of that Everton defence who've done so well for Everton last season. There's obviously a worry that there could be teething or a lack of strength in defence there. That's what I was meaning by the question marks. And I think there's room for improvement, and I think Steve-O kind of went for the jugular, like Chat said, when it can be improved on, and that's just our feedback. And take it how you want. By all means, I would love it. If you came back in game week 1 with this team, Notorious Nerd, and absolutely blew everyone else's points score out of the park and said, you know what? I went with this team and I didn't take your advice, Jason. I didn't take your advice, Steve-O. And I got 87 points in game week 1 because Sane got a double and Lacazette got a hat trick or something like that. And I'll tell you what, I would be like, right, fair enough. I'll do a stream without a hat on just for you, Notorious Nerd. But just don't think it's going to happen. But I would love it if it does. But thank you for joining us this evening.
Before we get Chicken... Cheers, Notorious. Thank you for joining us. Before we get Chicken Tikka Mo Salah on, so his team's at 2058, Jason, and Rate My Team. Very interesting team he's got there. So Chicken Tikka Mo Salah will get you on in a second. Just want to reveal the results of our poll that I put up. Do you look upon premium defenders as better options than the equivalent price midfielders? I kind of prefix that by saying, but would you bring in more premium defenders if it has a neglecting factor on the rest of your team? But overall, it was 70% in favour of yes, people prefer premium defenders over the equivalent priced midfielders. So hence why very popular picks of premium defenders. But talking of heavy defences, I think, bring up Chicken Tikka Mo Salah team up, because I'm very interested in this.
I think Origi is starting.
Okay, so Chicken Tikka Mo Salah is live on air. Chicken Tikka Mo Salah, are you there? You can hear us?
Yeah.
And he's left.
And are you there now?
And he's back.
You
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay. Do you want to just mute the stream? If it's running.
Yeah, done it. Yeah.
So Steve-O was just highlighting your teams. You've posted 2 teams here, and first of all, we did a poll. I don't know if you took part in the poll on Twitter that overwhelmingly suggested that 5 at the back is the preferred option at the start of the season. Now, I see Lucas Moura in one of them, and I see one team with Fraser, and one team with Lucas Moura, and obviously not a great deal of difference in between, really.
Yeah, they were the only. Obviously, all the rest of the players are the same, but obviously I've just gone either with Fraser or Moira, but I'm not sure yet. It's a hard decision.
Well, I know which one Boona would choose. And...
Tikka Masala. Oh,
Yo.
I choose Tikka Masala all day.
Well, even in this heat, I wouldn't eat curry in this heat.
No.
God, Jesus.
I got to say that defense is looking a bit weak.
Maitland-Niles is. I mean, anything with an Arsenal shirt on, I'm just avoiding myself. And the fact
I've only gone. Yeah, I've only gone with Maitland-Niles just for the first 2, because I think he's got decent attacking potential. And Newcastle and Burnley, I can see him getting 2 clean sheets, to be honest.
I mean, I can live with having one 4.5 or 5.0 starting defender, but having 2 5.0s and a 4.5 is, for me, just not good spread of money.
No, I just don't like the Lacazette pick. It's again, you have gone with these kind of cheaper alternatives in your team, and you've gone with ones that you would expect them to feature decent minutes. But I just think that it's a. I mean, yeah, you've gone with one too many risks, really. I think I would go with 1 or maximum 2, and you've gone with 3. Maitland-Niles for me, Lacazette for me, and Cathcart. I mean, that's my opinion. I mean, I like the Lucas Moura pick. I like the Fraser pick. I think you're on the right track there. I just think that Lacazette can free up so much money to invest in your defense. If you're going to go 5 at the back, you got to invest in your defense. You can't go with cheapies to bolster your team. You're going to go 5. You can't go in. You're kind of half in the pool. You've got 1 foot in the pool. It's time to dive in and throw that money in the defense.
Dive in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've only gone. I've gone with Laka. Obviously, I'm planning to wildcard after game week 4 anyway, and I thought obviously to have Laka, because I think obviously the first 2 fixtures, he might be on penalties as well because he took one against Madrid. I'm not sure. And yeah, I think for the first 2, and obviously if they're playing the wing backs this year and they keep the same lineup with maybe Laka up front with Aubameyang, then I think it's good. Also, if they play, say if they do like a 3-4-2-1.
Can I just say, Steve-O, I know your typing is louder than Chicken Tikka's voice at the moment.
Really?
Yeah, it might be worth using your mobile if you're going to talk in the chat. Just an option, really. It's just drowning him out a little bit. That's all. I just wanted to bring it to attention. But yeah, carry on, Chicken.
So I've gone obviously Lacazette. I think just for the first 2 fixtures, and then I was planning to go Vardy, but anyway after that I was gonna do wildcard on after game week 4, but I think Cathcart. I think 2 out of his first 4 I think could be clean sheets. Newcastle away and Brighton. Obviously he got Everton and West Ham. Then at home, and then obviously Aki for the first 2 as well. So yeah, but obviously it's hard to have obviously a really good defense with the 3 in midfield and the 2 up front I've gone with. So I'd obviously have to downgrade Lacazette.
Yeah, that's my thoughts.
Yeah.
That's my advice anyway.
I'd probably reallocate that money into midfield for the likes of Perez or Tielemans. And, that way get rid of 1 or 2 of those defenders as well. Probably a better redistribution of funds.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Just taking time to go over all the different drafts because I've literally done so many.
Yeah.
It's just getting the right one really, and obviously seeing what's going on with pre-season injuries, etc.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But thanks for bringing the talking points to our attention at least. Anyway, I mean, it's about spreading that money out, and I think the one sentence to take away from this is if you're gonna go with 5 at the back, it's all in. You got to go in the money. You got to spend the money in the defense.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on, Chicken Tikka. We're going to try and get through a few more people now, and before we go,
we do, Jace, what are your and Boona's thoughts on this new loan signing for Arsenal in Danny Cabellos? Apparently, Football 365 saying he could be filling Aaron Ramsey's role.
I don't know much about him. I don't know about much about
He
him.
plays for Arsenal. Yeah.
He looks quite good.
Is he wearing an Arsenal shirt this year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, they won't be getting him in then. No. I mean, it's hard. It's a hard one. I don't know much about him. I don't know if chat can tell me about him or whether he's prolific.
He's looked
apparently
good.
Apparently he's got a lot of genuine potential and could be in the same role as, say, Cesc Fabregas, David Silva kind of player. So yeah, that's what Football 365 are thinking.
He's looked good because Spurs have also been in for him. So if I'm thinking about it from a non-bitter perspective, then he's definitely got potential. I've watched some YouTube videos of him. He's got good skill. So just if he comes in at a good price, if we're talking 6.57 million, he could actually be quite a good signing, like from an FPL perspective.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I'm just gonna get a video of him. I just want to see him in action. You guys talk amongst yourselves.
He's done quite well for Spain under 21s.
Yeah, I heard he was the star player in that tournament, that recent one that they were in.
Yeah.
So
he's done well in that.
Steve, I wanted to get your perspective. Given Chicken Tikka Mo Salah's team, obviously there's a series of 5.0s in there, and it's something that I've been kind of messing around with today because I'm playing a 4-5-1 with, at the moment, Walker Peters as my 4th defender at 5.0. What's your thoughts on that 5.0 bracket? Same question goes to chat because I'm monitoring it, so it'd be good to hear what the chat thinks about the 5.0 defenders at the same time.
They're really annoying. Because
it is quite annoying.
take Burnley as an example. All their defenders virtually all 5 million. Wolves defenders are virtually, they're what, 5.5.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's like Jason made the point about who the hell, I can't remember who it was now, upgrading whatever it was up to Wan-Bissaka because he was only 1 million more. It's the fact that you could get a premium defender for just 0.5 or 1 million more, and I just think that 5 million price bracket is just they're just rubbish. It's just all rubbish.
The two that, I mean, it seems like a lot of people are quite interested in Ake, and I presume that's more so due to the fixtures and the attacking potential that he's got. I mean, if he goes to, there's been some rumours linking him with City. I mean, if he goes to City, I imagine teams will be ripped up everywhere and he'll be straight in because at 5.0 in the City team, that's absolute class. But the two players I'm particularly interested in at this moment are Walker Peters, only because he's featured quite heavily in pre-season and Aurier doesn't seem anywhere near it, and also Zuma. Zuma's quite an interesting one. Obviously, with Rudiger out at the moment, he's obviously vying for that centre-back spot with Christensen. But you thought about Zuma at all? Or are you going to wait and see, who starts?
That's a goal. Jeez. I was just watching the highlights of this guy.
I would take...
He's a good player.
I would personally take Walker Peters over Zuma.
Yeah,
I think
that's
maybe
what I'm on
based
at the
on what
moment.
you just said that Walker Peters, he has got a better chance of starting for Tottenham ahead of Zuma, personally, because we just don't know what Zuma's what do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? Whatever his transfer business is, I've completely forgotten the word is completely lost. But yeah, I think that I think Lampard seems to be toying around with Azpilicueta going into the centre back role.
Nah, I think it'd be right back.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's going to be happening. We were speaking to one of the other Chelsea fans in Discord for the last 2 days. He's been saying how, Davy P that is, and he's been saying he really does not think Azpilicueta will, move to centre back. He's probably best placed at right back. I've seen rumours linking Zappacosta away with a loan move, although Davey P, he doesn't think that will happen, but he's confident Aspi stays at right back. So, I mean, if he does stay at right back, is he more appealing to you or less? I presume more.
Yes, he's a lot more. Although, isn't it right in saying that didn't he perform better as a centre back than he did at right back? So it's a very peculiar one, that circumstance. But I'm not really looking at Chelsea anymore, to be honest with you. Like I say, I think I'm just going to end up with the FPL community template team with Laporte, the two Liverpool defenders, and either Digne or Coleman. That's what I have a feeling that I'm going to end up doing.
So your team right now, you've got Laporte and Zinchenko as well as one Liverpool defender?
Van Dijk, yeah.
Okay.
That's
fair
the team at the moment.
You've got no Robbo or Trent?
That's correct, yeah.
Not worried about that at all? Both, they've shown how potent they are.
I would be.
Obviously, yes, I am worried about it, and I don't think I'll stick to it. It's just that there's just something about this pre-season where Robertson, Alexander-Arnold and Van Dijk have all started together, in the last two fixtures, and they've conceded goals.
They've conceded.
Yeah.
You've got to remember, though, it's that they've not been able to play their style of football. Their style of football is counter-press, but with Firmino, Mane, Salah not being involved, they've not been able to do it. So inevitably, they're going to have teams countering them, and I think that's where that problem's come out. So once those three return, I think it should be a bit different. I don't think they'll be getting beaten the way they've got beaten pre-season. Personally.
Honestly, I really, really, really am going to be laughing my head off when, like I've said this, I'm just repeating what some Twitter accounts said, but when Liverpool on the opening day in game week 1, they win 2 assists. They win 2-1, and it'll be like some random players from Liverpool scoring and assisting, and Norwich it'll be someone like Pookie or whatever, and everybody going meltdown. I knew I should have picked Pookie. Why did I get double Liverpool? Why didn't I get double? It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Quick question, a bit random, just because I'm fiddling about my team. At the moment, I've got Trent and Robertson. Would you? And obviously, I've got Walker Peters in that fourth defender slot. Would you downgrade Robertson to Van Dijk if it enabled Walker Peters to a 5.5?
I think that 0.5.
It just depends.
In what respect?
If Walker Peters will definitely start, because if he starts for Tottenham, and obviously I think they'll be a bit more protected with Ndombele coming in, then maybe it'd work out, because obviously Robertson with the assist and Trent with the assist. I think it just depends on if he starts or not. Walker Peters.
But I think, going on what you're saying, Booner, I think that 0.5 saving is so valuable.
Because I'll have Trent anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Because I think a 5.5 like Coleman instead of Walker Peters is a massive upgrade.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I just want to say, for the last 2.5 minutes, I've been watching this Welcome to Arsenal video on YouTube, Danny Caballos. If he plays half as good for Arsenal, he's the real deal. Like, he's got pretty much everything. He picks a pass. He can go around two players. He can smash a ball from 30 yards and score top net. He can take a free kick. Like, I mean, okay, it's a highlight reel. I'm not going to get so over the top with it, but wow, he's better than I thought. I'll give him that. But fair enough.
Football 365 say that they've got a quality player and he should start immediately in the team.
How much do you think he'll come in at, guys?
Is he definitely signed? Is he definitely signed?
Yeah, he's
confirmed. Season-long loan.
A season? Oh, a loan.
Yes, a loan.
Right.
Correct. But he should still start, though. He's got a lot of quality.
I mean, yeah. I mean, if you had him and it's either him or Mkhitaryan. Oh, let me have a think.
Yeah.
Depends on what price he comes in.
Tough one, isn't it, Jason?
I mean, he'll probably come in at about, 7.5?
I wouldn't have him if it's that. If it's 6.57,
it won't be 6.5.
But I mean, Alex Voller makes a point. He is joining Arsenal.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's Anyway, that's enough of that. But
talking of Arsenal fans, FPL Little Saints, Jason, the women. Let's see what he thinks of this Cabellos.
Okay, let's bring him in. FPL Little Saints, you're live on Elite Radio or Elite FPL Radio. I'll speak right in a minute. Can you hear me? FPL Little Saints, your mic is muted, by the way. Hello.
Evening, lads.
Good evening. I've just been, I don't know if you've seen, but I've just been watching a highlight reel of a new player of yours, Danny Caballos, signed on a season-long loan. Are you excited about him?
Well, first of all, I was enjoying your reactions to you actually watching that. That was actually class.
I just heard Arsenal signing. I thought, that's probably nothing interesting, and I thought I'll give it a check out. And wow. Okay.
I would say I am excited about him, but we have to wait and see. I was kind of excited when we were getting Dennis Suarez, but again, he was like a total flop. So it was a wait and see. But he's got all the attributes. Let's put it that way.
You know, you went for a celebration dinner this evening, didn't you?
Nah, not that.
At least you got somebody in that isn't a kid.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I mean, who was that other guy you signed that's like 17 years old or something?
Centre back, yeah, Saliba. Season-long loan back to Saint Etienne, though.
25 mil.
Yeah. Well,
explain that to me, Little Saints. You've not got money at the moment, but you're going to spend 30 million or 25 million on a defender and then send him back.
Do you know what? I don't actually believe that, because apparently we've actually launched the 65 million plus Reece Nelson for Zaha, and they've turned it down. So obviously we've got the money for it.
It must be so frustrating being an Arsenal supporter right now.
It's frustrating because it looks like they're addressing the areas that are second priority. Everyone in their grand knows that we need a defender.
Yeah. You're top heavy. You're so top heavy, that team.
Well, it looks like how. Do you know? I'm kind of thinking that we're doing a Liverpool as the first year Klopp came. It's like we're gonna outscore the other team and win. But that's not how it is. Strikers win games. Defenses win titles, and that's how it is.
It's that cliche, attack is the best form of defence, isn't it? That's what they're kind of opting for this season anyway, it seems. Because defence is your problem area, so why not address it? It just makes no sense.
Exactly. That's what I don't understand. And there's plenty of players that we can actually go through and get that are in the Premier League. Let's say Dunk, let's say Connor Cody. There are players there that we can actually go and get.
Yeah.
So this is what is vexing me. And with the Koscielny situation, and with Mustafi, not even. Well, I don't know what he is anyway. He's not a defender.
Nah, he's awful.
Exactly. So I don't understand it. It's like I don't understand football, and I've been watching football for the past 30 years. So like.
Well, still got time to make some signings in defence, but don't hold out too much hope on that going on your record. But yeah, I mean, we're talking about Arsenal. You may have heard me talk about Lacazette, and how I don't feel Lacazette is a good selection at the start of the season, and obviously Maitland-Niles being another one that I've seen in teams with Notorious Nerd posted. What's your thoughts on Arsenal? Are you going to have, as an Arsenal fan, any Arsenal players in your team game week 1?
Well, luckily Steve-O's here. I don't know if he remembers my strategy from from the other day. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, copy and Boa Rice.
Something like that, yeah.
Have you posted your team in the Rate My Team lately?
Lately, no. If you want, I could quickly post it now.
Yeah, quickly post it, yeah, so we can all see it.
All right, just continue talking. Give me a sec.
Yeah, sure.
Whilst it does that, can you just bring my team up, because this is the team that's going to win the whole game.
Oh god, here we go. Well, why have you screenshot?
I've just put it in now.
Yeah, but have you screenshotted your team from outer space? Because I'm trying to bloody read. Hang on. Alexander-Arnold, Van Dijk, Zinchenko, Coleman, Salah, Fraser, Sterling, Lucas Moura. Oh, you had to get Lucas Moura in there, didn't you? Tielemans. You're going with Tielemans. You think Perez is a bit niggle, do you?
Yeah, I mean, Tielemans was, by far the man of the match the other day. I was reading the report, and he was involved in literally everything.
But Perez was like that a couple of games before, wasn't it? It was Perez's name.
I'm just going to wait and see how he beds in the Leicester team, and if he even starts game week 1. I've seen some reports saying he might miss game week 1, so just a bit wary. That's all.
Okay, so you have got an Arsenal player in your team. Actually, I think a lot of people are going to have Nketiah as a bench option or a bench fodder.
Yeah.
So he doesn't count, by the way. So my question is, so yeah, you're not going to really have a. But as people in chat, Ari Hiroki in chat says Lacazette is the best selection. Albert is playing right mid into RF role for defensive purpose. Would you agree that if you would go between Orba and Lacazette? Would you choose Lacazette? Chicken.
Are you asking myself or Little
Chicken,
Saints?
Boona, Chicken, whoever wants to answer first.
Lacazette.
Well, sorry, Little Saints is the Arsenal fan. Sorry about that. Little Saints. Yeah. I mean, let's go with Little Saints. He knows more about Arsenal than I do.
Well, I've posted the 2 teams, which I'm going to go with game week 1 and game week 3. I've actually got Aubameyang in the team. So
he's explosive. I'll give you that. 2 good fixtures.
Yeah, that's the main thinking behind it, and not only that, the price range that it's in it is enabling me for game week 3 to change it up. So if Jason puts up the teams, you can see it. Yeah, but getting back to the question, although Aubameyang's been, let's say, scoring the goals, Lacazette's got 3 assists during this preseason. So, and one of them was actually for Aubameyang against Real Madrid the other day.
That was a quality assist as well.
Yeah. So I don't think you can go wrong between them. Let's be honest. But it's just that I would say Lacazette would be the more ticking you over the points, as to Aubameyang will be more explosive, double digits every other game, every 2 games, let's say.
Yeah.
So the point being is that if you can actually hit him in the captain's role during that double digit.
Okay.
Question for you though is Lacazette took the penalty the other day. Can we read much into that? And if Lacazette is now on penalties, maybe it was just practice. That definitely makes Lacazette a better option, don't you think?
I don't see it as like that, because as we saw last year, Aubameyang was taking the penalties, but when Lacazette was on a bit of a dry spell, he gave it to Lacazette, then vice versa. So, and you can see with their celebrations, they're having like a handshake and bowing to each other. It's not like a competition between them. It's more like, let me help you, help me.
Yeah. I just had to, Chicken. I just had to mute you, my friend, because there's a lot of noise coming from your mic. But carry on.
So I don't know if you remember back in the day when it was Perez with Henry. They were kind of like taking turns in taking the penalties, and whoever won it will give it to the other, and something like that.
Yeah, it's not a sign of champions though, is it? Like Robbo and Trent wouldn't be doing that to each other. Like they had that competition between them for assists, but they were proper going for it.
They were. I must admit, I've gone for both of your teams. The one with Salah and I like. The one without Salah and I don't like. That's basically.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of betting on. Is that?
But I wouldn't go captain in Haller at home to Man City.
And Calvert-Lewin, explain that pick, because I've seen Davey P again. He had Calvert-Lewin, but I believe he changed it to Wesley, who I personally think is a great option. What's your thinking around Calvert-Lewin? Because I'm not won over him.
It's basically fixtures.
Okay.
So because they haven't got a striker yet, it's only him and Toussaint who he can't find a brick wall, let alone a goal. So it's got to fall to Calvert-Lewin, and the only reason is because I don't know why, but I'm so excited about Haller.
You saw the. Is it? No, that's Wesley. Never mind. Why are you excited about Haller?
Like I explained the other day to Steve-O, last year, obviously, Arsenal being in the Europa, I was watching quite a lot of the Europa League, and him in that Frankfurt team, he was explosive. He was a bit of everything. For me personally, I think Real Madrid got the wrong player.
Yeah.
Really?
So
That's a big statement.
You think he's better than Jovic?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I know he played. I know Jovic played in front of him. He assisted Jovic quite a bit. There was some people in forums I read that said that Jovic kind of was the quality player and kind of helped boost Haaland's stats due to the assists. But I don't know how true that is. But I obviously you said you've watched him. I haven't. I certainly think that if he does knock on and do well for West Ham at that price point, he's a little bit more expensive than I would have gone. If he was 0.5 less, I'd be more inclined to bring him in. I just think that early wildcards could see him being a feature if he does start the season well.
If he starts well. Same with Wesley, I believe.
Yeah, I can see him being on an early wildcard.
I mean, if you look at Wesley's fixtures, they're absolutely unreal. They've got 5 home fixtures against really, really favourable teams between Game Week 2 and Game Week 9. If he starts well, he's going to be in a lot of teams.
No,
I've already earmarked him for a Game Week 3 entry into my team.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, you can do that with that price point. You can do that.
Yeah, I've got Mora and Wilson in my team at the moment, both of which I don't probably want in Game Week 3 with Son coming back and Wilson playing City. So that could be Son and Wesley.
Absolutely.
For free.
Absolutely. Well, I'm mindful of the time, so thank you for joining us, Little Saints. But we're going to just try and bring in a couple more before we go off, because I'm actually feeling a little bit sick at the moment. But all the doors and windows are shut in this room. I probably should open them. Bear with me a moment. Steve, you got the floor.
Oh, thanks very much. No, I was going on what Boona was just saying about this Wesley. I've got his fixtures up at the moment, so obviously it's Tottenham away. I was agreeing with what Boona was saying in the chat, actually, regarding the fact that Bournemouth at home, we all know that Bournemouth can't do anything defensively. Everton at home, I said that's a tough fixture. Crystal Palace away, that's a really good fixture. Crystal Palace's home record is atrocious. West Ham United at home, again, another excellent fixture. Arsenal away, yeah, you can scrap that right off. Burnley at home, that's a tough one. Norwich away, again, I'll have to look at their championship record and whatnot, but that looks like it's got goals. And Brighton at home, Albion, based on what some of the Swedish guys were saying, Papa Smurf and the defender, and Graham Potter being a manager that seems to want to play a Bayern Munich style kind of approach. Maybe that could have goals in again. So yeah, I think you're onto something, Boona.
I don't think it's just Wesley as well. Aston Villa generally are looking quite good, attacking wise. The likes of Grealish and Jota as well. I know Jota he scored a brace yesterday or the day before, and it's quite a short sample size. But I've seen him playing for Brentford as well, and he's a class player. So we just got to see how they start. But I think all of their attacking options could be interesting.
Are you not concerned that they've done a bit of the Fulham and bought about half the Championship and various other players across the world to bolster their squad?
They seem like they've actually signed some decent players. Right, okay. Genuinely, like.
So do you think actually, like their other Birmingham counterparts in Wolves, they've spent really wisely and actually, I'm not suggesting for 1 minute they're going to challenge for Europe or anything, but could they actually have a really good season?
Villa?
Yes.
They could, but at the same time, you are right in the sense that they've actually literally gone and bought every man and their dog almost. They've probably made about 10, 12 signings. The problem with that is if they're chucking them all in, it's going to take a while to have that cohesion within the squad as well. So it could backfire. It just really depends how they settle in.
I mean, I know nothing about this. Is it Danny Luiz that they got from Man City today on loan?
Yeah, I don't know nothing, but I had a look through the tweets and, the replies to the Aston Villa fan page, and they're really raving about him, so who knows? I've not heard of him.
Okay, I mean, like that. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. I've never heard of him. I don't know. I'm assuming he's like a kid, like one of the, reserve team players or whatever that's like 2021 or whatever. But no, I don't know. Based on what you're saying and everything, it does sound like they've bought some. I like Target. I think Target's a really good buy for Aston Villa, a player which was never given a chance at Southampton, but whenever he did play for them, he seemed to do really well. Went to Fulham for when they were promoted, did really well for them.
I agree.
And then,
in fact, yeah.
Who did he go on loan with last season? Remind me.
Wasn't he playing for Southampton, or was he loaned? Was he loaned to someone?
I'm sure he was loaned back out to somebody, and he didn't play for Southampton. I'm sure he was loaned out to somewhere, and he did really well again. But certainly, he's somebody at 4.5. I think that this Target could actually be a potential bargain.
So apparently, he was loaned to Fulham, although I do not remember him playing for Fulham last season.
No, yes, he was. Yeah, he did play for them. I'm sure it was the end of the whatchamacallit season, but obviously by that point they were relegated.
Tell you what though, so Fulham's actually Aston Villa actually a really interesting team right now for the likes of the likes of Wesley, and their fixtures are great. Target also great option, but if Heaton goes there, he is going to be an absolute steal at 4.5 because we know what he's capable of.
Talking of goalkeepers, I read that this Dean Henderson is now officially signed for Sheffield United. Is that right?
Yeah, it's not been confirmed by the Sheffield United Twitter page just yet, but Sky Sports were reporting that deal's been agreed for. I think it was a season-long loan, but he's a great keeper, and he will be right up there.
Talking of Sheffield United, your thoughts on this Lundstrom that started out of position, basically in midfield for Sheffield United in all the pre-seasons, done okay. I think he's got a couple of assists, or maybe just an assist, possibly an out-of-position player. What are your thoughts on him as just a 4 million budget option in defence?
I did get a little bit excited when I saw that posted. I can't remember if it was in our Discord or on Twitter, but I looked into it a bit more, and I think I retweeted something. Then I had a Sheffield United fan reply back to me, and he actually said I wouldn't be getting too excited about Lundstrom because he didn't actually feature at all last season.
Yeah.
So he doesn't really think he's going to be a feature this season if he's not playing in the Championship. So I would tread carefully.
I've been reading up of people raving about Ender Stevens.
He does look like the Doherty of this season, but 5.0, I'm not too sure just yet.
Yeah, and the fixtures as well. There's a lot of reds. But I mean, they do kind of. I mean, again, it's just the timing of the wild card, isn't it? Who knows? But it does go red all the way to even Wolves away. That's not a Newcastle at home, game week 15. That's when it starts to get a bit green for them, and then Norwich away, Aston Villa at home, Brighton and Hove away. Yeah, it's
Of all the teams that have come up though, Sheffield United are the most defensively sound, so they could have some golden nuggets in that defence. Just got to see how they start.
I just want to read a few things out in chat while we're here, actually, because there's people asking things away, chatting amongst themselves. Got Boa Reese in chat as well. Got someone about Al Ghazi, Egyptian Abdul. I don't know how to say your name. Abdul Vali Mohammed said Villa's bought an Egyptian winger, Al Ghazi. His highlights on YouTube are pretty good, and then Gabriel de Rop underneath says he's a Dutch. Al Ghazi, it sounds to me like an Egyptian. It's an Egyptian. Yeah,
he's Egyptian.
Yeah.
He actually played all season for them on loan, I believe, last season, but they've made that signing permanent. Talking of which, whilst we've been on air, we'll have actually signed another midfielder from Bruges, someone by the name of Marvelous Nakamba, and I'm not joking. His first name's Marvelous.
It's a millennial. It's a very millennial name, that.
But you see my point. They are literally signing everyone right now, so it's going to be interesting to see how they all bed in.
Okay. I'm going to just go through a few things as well. Get on the Villa bandwagon, says Geordie Kev. Don't drink Coke, drink water. I've been drinking water. Chabin's asking me, am I feeling any better? And I wish I could say I do, but I'm not feeling too good at the moment. So I don't want to be here for too much longer. But by all means, Steve, if you want to continue, I'll let you crack on. But
No. We'll just
Jason
end it when you want,
Costa,
mate.
Jason Costa says in chat, quick question: have you guys seen the video with Ozil and Kolasinac? What is this video with Ozil and Kolasinac? It's a second person now. I mean,
Apparently, I've not seen anything, but apparently Kolasinac, someone was trying to break into Ozil's car, and Kolasinac basically just bodyguarded him, showed what a bodyguard he is, and took him out or something. I've not seen it myself.
I'm gonna have a quick look and see.
Viewer discretion required.
Is it? I'm watching it on there now. I'm gonna put it on the stream. I'm just watching it back. Well, it's on the Mirror site. I mean, fair play to him. I mean, he's, he's, yeah, wow. I'll put it on the stream. So these are, I take it, moped thieves. It seems they've got the moped hats on. Big problem in London at the moment with these moped gangs, and Kolasinac actually squaring up to these guys with knives.
Really?
Unbelievable,
wow.
Unbelievable. And is that Ozil in the car? Just chilling out in the car.
Yeah.
He's driving away with Kolasinac. Oh my God! Fair enough. Anyway, so Ozil drives away. Okay. Well, anyway, that's crazy. That's crazy. We don't want to see things like that. But wow. Oh well. He's anyway. Yeah. I can't really beat that. Wesley says Geordie Kev. I mean, again, we've talked about Wesley. The penalty he took was absolutely incredible. But yeah.
I love that from FPL Classico in the chat. He goes, Kolasinac should take all 3 bonus for keeping Ozil's sheet clean.
Like it. That's really good. That's really good. Very witty. But have we got anyone else in the waiting room that's been waiting for ages to come on?
Let's have a quick look and see any names.
Just want to bring people in that have been waiting. We've had Ryan in, we've had Notorious Nerds.
We've had Ruddy.
It's just Colin. We'll bring
Colin
Colin.
the Moonwalker.
Colin the Moonwalker, you're the last guest on tonight's show. You're live on Elite FPL Radio. Talk us through your team. Have you got it posted in the Rate My Team? Colin, are you there? Colin, are you there? He keep jumping out the channel.
Abdul's get Abdul on. He's we'll get Abdul as the final.
Okay, Abdul, are you there?
Please unmute your mic.
Yeah.
Okay. Abdul, are you there? Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you mute the stream, please?
Yeah. Hold on one second. Okay. I muted it.
Hello, Abdul. Welcome to the stream. You're on air at the moment. Thank you for joining us and being here. Have you posted your team? I think you have. Yeah, I can see it here. It's another small one. I've got it up on screen. Steve, are you looking at it?
I am, and it's different.
So, yeah, it is different. We like different here. We do, and I've been thinking about Harry Kane for a while, but it just can't. He can't fit into a sensible team for me.
That is too different.
It's so different. But it's. I don't want to say it's bad.
No,
it's not bad, but it's different. I think different is the key word. Yeah, there's no defense.
So for people listening on audio, it's Ryan in goal, Dunk, Kelly, Zuma, and then Salah, abdkzz, Sterling, Jorginho, and Tielemans, and then up front, Kane and Aguero.
Jorginho might be on penalties, isn't it? That's one of the reasons of win. Could be on pens this season, so he might get 100, 150 points.
That's a might, though, isn't it?
Yeah, you're clearly somebody that's not interested in any premium defenders whatsoever, but more interested in the attacking options.
Yeah, no defenders. Zuma, maybe he might play Rudiger's injured, so I don't know. It's just what
the problem you've got there. The problem you've got there, Abdul, is if Salah, Sterling, Kane, Aguero, if 2 of those don't do anything, then you've basically had a bad week. And for me, I don't think you can rely on just those 4 players to return every single week. You need a bit more of a balance. So, for example, if you downgraded one of your premium forwards, I think you could spread that money in defence a bit more. And I think they would give the team a lot better balance.
Even if you did if you did one of Kane, or I mean, you got Sterling, so you could take Aguero down to a King or a Wilson. Even Wilson would give you a bit more money to invest in your defence there.
Definitely.
I mean, I like to see different teams, and I would always encourage people to bring different teams to the table. And let's be honest, any team can do well game week 1. We don't know who are going to be the standout options and the standout players. You know, and Aguero, he could very much do well. Kane can very much do well at home to Aston Villa. I can see points potential in those players, but that's where it kind of, I mean, other than Salah and Sterling, so you've got Aguero, Kane, Salah, Sterling. That's where a lot of the kind of the points potential is kind of lost. Then after that, I mean, Jorginho, I mean, it's not an easy fixture away at United. I think United are pretty shored up now in defence, and I think that Chelsea are going to struggle to probably get a goal against them. I really do. That's not just me talking as a United fan. I've seen them pre-season. I think Wan-Bissaka is going to be an absolute must. I really do. Quote me on that. You can quote me on that. So Jorginho is a bit of a risk for me. I know he's on penalties. I just don't see him getting much returns. Maybe the odd clean sheet points, and he's going to play a full game. Yes, but I think that's going to be lots of 2s and 3s from him. I think. Tielemans, yes, again, you would expect points from Tielemans or Perez if you choose Perez. So yeah, but like Boona said, that's kind of where your points potential is going. Then you got Zuma, Kelly, and then Dunk. I mean, and you've doubled up on Brighton. I think you're a bit top heavy. You're like Arsenal. That team is like Arsenal. It's got all.
Aguero's the one man you want to remove, especially given the reports that he might miss the start of the season anyway. Abdul.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Aguero. Spend some money in defence.
I think so, and again, it's not a bad team. It's just a team that needs a couple of changes, and I think those changes are in defence. I mean, you can go with by all means. I'd be loving it if you went with the Kane, Sterling. I mean, this is the conundrum, isn't it? Having Salah, Sterling, and Kane in the same team. Ultimately, you're gonna have to sacrifice in areas of the team, and that's obviously at the moment your defence is really suffering. So just getting down Aguero to a more, even if it's like a King for Bournemouth, who's also on penalties. Great fixtures. It gives you that funds to kind of upgrade your Kelly, your Dunk, because most people have got Kelly as their bench player. You don't want to be relying on him and Dunk, as well as Ryan each week. Yeah, that's my advice, and I just consider it.
Cheers. Thank you, guys.
No, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you sharing your team. It's really good to see your thought. I mean, your team selection and your thought process behind it. It's great to hear it, and I appreciate it.
Cool. Speak to you soon.
Yeah, cheers, Abdul. I'll speak to you soon. Yeah.
How do I disconnect?
Yeah, I'll get you out, man. It's fine.
Cheers, Abdul.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go lie down. I've got a bit of a upset stomach at the moment. I don't know why. I don't know if this water's got anything in it. It's Buxton Mineral. I know it's cheap and cheerful, but hopefully it's not been taken out of a local river and resold in a local supermarket. But yeah, guys, at the moment, I'm just going to say thank you ever so much for joining us this evening throughout the stream. It's been 2 hours on the dot almost. We've had up to 95 people tuning in at times, and it's really great to see that many people showing an interest at this stage of the pre-season. I know there's been games on this evening as well, and I haven't read out every comment, but I've been reading through a lot of them in chat, and I look forward to it. I look forward to seeing you guys coming back next time, and the closer we get to game week 1, the more exciting it's going to get. And hit that subscribe button, guys. If you haven't followed or subscribed to the stream and hit that notification, please do so. If you like it, we'd love to see you come back and join our Discord as well. And get involved in our streams, get involved in the discussion that's going on there. There's no such thing as a bad team. You're going to get constructive feedback. That's what we want to provide. We want to give constructive feedback to people. We're not the experts. We're not going to give you all the solutions to all your questions. But what we can do, we can give you a little bit of advice. I mean, we finished. I finished just outside the 1,000th place last year. Steve-O finished just outside the 10,000. Am I right? So
just outside 20,000. Blimey.
Was it 20,000? Oh, okay. Well,
22, yeah.
22,000. So, you know, we take the game quite seriously, and you know, we're here to just share our opinions. That's what it's all about. And thank you ever so much, Peter, for that subscribe. It's much appreciated. That's a long name.
Jason, can I just add as well, just as a really last leaving thought for those guys in Discord, I'm probably going to be in voice hangouts in our, you know, once this stream ends. So if you guys want to continue this, more than happy to do so.
Off air. I mean, that's another thing. I've seen people just chilling out talking about FPL off air. That's great. I mean, that's what it's all about, this community. Just having discussions with other people. And we just want to get you guys involved as much as we can, and that's why we're doing it. But Steve-O, do you want to fire away with anything else? Final thoughts?
Yeah, I'll do the usual admin, really. If you are in the stream right now and you haven't hit that like button, it really does show your support. Just quite a quick, simple hit of the like button. It tells YouTube that we're a good show, basically. Helps promote us unofficially. But no, like Jason said, God knows when we're going to be next streaming. I can tell you now that I'll be hopefully potentially doing. Where's this stream? 5th one in 5 days now.
I think it's at least 4. I think maybe 5. But you want to do one every day, don't you?
I'm trying to do one every day up till next week. But basically, the last one being Thursday next week. That's the plan. So I may be doing one tomorrow morning. I really don't know, but it all depends on what I'm doing.
I know that it bodes well for our Australian audience when you do them in the mornings. But
yeah,
no pressure on that. But yeah, I'm gonna have to shoot.
No, that's fine. You finished. You cut it all off, mate.
Take it easy, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you ever so much for your support and your continued support. Thank you.
Hello there, and welcome to our Elite FPL.
Pun where Shaw's lights were knocked out. Dan, you may want to turn on your light because you're.
Chat said that Steve-O, if you bench Alonso and he returns, you have to get a history tattoo.
Well, people in chat saying, Jack, before we move on to the Elite FPL.
First of all, my name isn't Jack. Right, okay, I'm gonna let Dan speak because it seems to be mainly me and. Go, Dan. Go ahead. What are you going to do?
No, it's absolutely fascinating.
Jason, try and just stop.
Right. Okay. Right. I'm.